Chapter 6 of The Pirate's Own Book. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Pirate's Own Book by Charles Elmes. Chapter 6. The Life of Captain Roberts. Bartholomew Roberts was trained to a seafaring life. Among other voyages which he made during the time that he lawfully procured his maintenance, he sailed for the Guinea coast in November 1719, where he was taken by the pirate Davis. He was at first very averse to that mode of life, and would certainly have deserted had an opportunity occurred. It happened to him, however, as to many upon another element, that preferment calmed his conscience, and reconciled him to that which he formerly hated. Davis having fallen in the manner related, those who had assumed the title of lords assembled to deliberate concerning the choice of a new commander. There were several candidates who, by their services, had risen to eminence among their brethren, and each of them thought themselves qualified to bear rule. One addressed the assembled lords, saying, that the good of the whole and the maintenance of order demanded a head, but that the proper authority was deposited in the community at large, so that if one should be elected who did not act and govern for the general good, he could be disposed, and another be substituted in his place. "We the original," said he, "of this claim, and should a captain be so saucy as to exceed prescription at any time, why, down with him. It will be a caution, after he is dead, to his successors to what fatal results any undue assumption may lead. However, it is my advice, while we are sober, to pitch upon a man of courage, and one skilled in navigation, one who, by his prudence and bravery, seems best able to defend this commonwealth, and ward us from the dangers and tempests of an unstable element, and the fatal consequences of anarchy. And such a one I take Roberts to be, a fellow in all respects worthy of your esteem and favour." This speech was applauded by all but Lord Simpson, who had himself strong expectations of obtaining the highest command. He at last, in a surly tone, said he did not regard whom they chose as a commander, provided he was not a papist, for he had conceived a mortal hatred to papists, because his father had been a sufferer in Monmouth's rebellion. Thus, though Roberts had only been a few weeks among them, his election was confirmed by the Lords and Commons. He, with the best face he could, accepted the dignity, saying, that since he had dipped his hand in muddy water, and must be a pirate, it was better being a commander than a private man. The governor being settled, and other officers chosen in the room of those who had fallen with Davis, it was resolved not to leave this place without revenging his death. Accordingly, 30 men, under the command of one Kennedy, a bold and profligate fellow, landed, and under cover of the fire of the ship, ascended the hill upon which the fort stood. They were no sooner discovered by the Portuguese than they abandoned the fort, and took shelter in the town. The pirates then entered without opposition, set fire to the fort, and tumbled the guns into the sea. Not satisfied with this injury, some proposed to land and set the town in flames. Roberts, however, reminded them of the great danger to which this would inevitably expose them, that there was a thick wood at the back of the town where the inhabitants could hide themselves, and that, when their all was at stake, they would make a bolder resistance, and that the burning or destroying of a few houses would be a small return for their labour, and the loss that they might sustain. This prudent advice had the desired effect, and they contented themselves with lightening the French vessel, and battering down several houses of the town, to show their high displeasure. Roberts sailed southward, captured a Dutch Guineaman, and, having emptied her of everything they thought proper, returned her to the commander. 2 days after, he captured an English ship, and, as the men joined in pirating, emptied and burned the vessel, and then sailed for St. Thomas. Meeting with no prize, he sailed for Anamaboa, and there watered and repaired. Having again put to sea, a vote was taken whether they should sail for the East Indies or for Brazil. The latter place was decided upon, and they arrived there in 28 days. Upon this coast our rovers cruised for about 9 weeks, keeping generally out of sight of land, but without seeing a sail, which discouraged them so that they determined to leave the station and steer for the West Indies; and, in order thereto, they stood in to make the land for the taking of their departure, by which means they fell in unexpectedly with a fleet of 42 sail of Portuguese ships off the bay of Los Todos Santos, with all their lading in for Lisbon, several of them of good force, who lay there waiting for 2 men of war of 70 guns each for their convoy. However, Roberts thought it should go hard with him, but he would make up his market among them, and thereupon he mixed with the fleet, and kept his men concealed till proper resolutions could be formed. That done, they came close up to one of the deepest, and ordered her to send the master on board quietly, threatening to give them no quarter, if any resistance or signal of distress was made. The Portuguese, being surprised at these threats, and the sudden flourish of cutlasses from the pirates, submitted without a word, and the captain came on board. Roberts saluted him in a friendly manner, telling him that they were gentlemen of fortune, and that their business with him was only to be informed which was the richest ship in that fleet, and if he directed them right he should be restored to his ship without molestation; otherwise he must expect instant death. He then pointed to a vessel of 40 guns and 150 men, and though her strength was greatly superior to Roberts', yet he made towards her, taking the master of the captured vessel with him. Coming alongside her, Roberts ordered the prisoner to ask how Seignior Captain did, and to invite him on board, as he had a matter of importance to impart to him. He was answered that he would wait upon him presently. Roberts, however, observing more than ordinary bustle on board, at once concluded that they were discovered, and pouring a broadside into her, they immediately boarded, grappled, and took her. She was a very rich prize, laden with sugar, skins, and tobacco, with 4,000 moidores of gold, besides other valuable articles. In possession of so much riches, they now became solicitous to find a safe retreat in which to spend their time in mirth and wantonness. They determined upon a place called the Devil's Island, upon the river Surinam, where they arrived in safety, and met with a kind reception from the governor and the inhabitants. In this river they seized a sloop, which informed them that she had sailed in company with a brigantine loaded with provisions. This was welcome intelligence, as their provisions were nearly exhausted. Deeming this too important a business to trust to foreign hands, Roberts, with 40 men in the sloop, gave chase to that sail. In the keenness of the moment, and trusting in his usual good fortune, Roberts supposed that he had only to take a short sail in order to bring in the vessel with her cargo; but to his sad disappointment, he pursued her during 8 days, and instead of gaining, was losing way. Under these circumstances, he came to anchor, and sent off the boat to give intelligence of their distress to their companions. In their extremity of want, they took up part of the floor of the cabin, and patched up a sort of tray with rope yarns, to paddle on shore to get a little water to preserve their lives. When their patience was almost exhausted, the boat returned, but instead of provisions, brought the unpleasing information that the lieutenant, one Kennedy, had run off with both the ships. The misfortune and misery of Roberts were greatly aggravated by reflecting upon his own imprudence and want of foresight, as well as from the baseness of Kennedy and his crew. Impelled by the necessity of his situation, he now began to reflect upon the means he should employ for future support. Under the foolish supposition that any laws, oaths, or regulations could bind those who had bidden open defiance to all divine and human laws, he proceeded to form a code of regulations for the maintenance of order and unity in his little commonwealth. But present necessity compelled them to action, and with their small sloop they sailed for the West Indies. They were not long before they captured 2 sloops, which supplied them with provisions, and a few days after, a brigantine, and then proceeded to Barbados. When off that island, they met a vessel